Hello and welcome to Production Bytes Reviews. I'm your host, Veranova, and today we're going to be reviewing SurferEQ from Sound Radix. SurferEQ is a pitch tracking equalizer. Now what this means is each of its 7 bands can track the pitch of the incoming sound and lock on to either its fundamental frequency or any of its harmonics. This means you can set up EQ curbs which are more relevant to the music itself because they can adjust themselves to always be affecting the same harmonics or fundamental frequency, as opposed to being set to a fixed frequency. Now what this means is it's a really good creative tool, but you can also use it in mixing to adjust the timbre of a recording. So first I'll give you a quick overview. SurferEQ has 7 EQ bands. The first one is a high pass filter, and the last one is a low pass filter, and the other 5 are bell EQs, one of which you can also turn on a comb filter. Each band has a frequency control, which also doubles as the harmonic selector. They also have a slope control, and the bell EQs have gains. You also have an output gain, a bypass switch, and you can even have 2 presets loaded to compare them. So I spoke a little bit about creative and mixing uses for this plugin, and I want to show you a few of the uses that I came up with. So firstly, you could use SurferEQ to adjust the tone of a sound in a really natural way. Right here I've got a lead sound, which sounds like this. And let's say I want to give it a little bit more punch, so I want to add a little bit of low end to it. So what I'd do in a normal EQ is I would turn on one of my EQ bands and give it a little bit of gain, and I would set this around the low frequencies. So what you can hear now is on the lower notes it sounds a lot thicker, however when it goes up to the higher notes it gets thin again, and that's because the fundamental frequency has moved away from this bell EQ up to around here. So what I can do with this is I can lock this EQ directly onto the fundamental frequency, and to do that you just click in this box here and type in 1, which is 1 times the fundamental frequency, and from now on it will lock on to the fundamental. So as you can hear, now it's always boosting the fundamental frequency and you get a really thick, strong sound. So what I could also do with this is give the recording a little bit more bite. So with a normal EQ, I would set my EQ band to about 5 kHz as there's a lot of bite in that frequency range, and that sounds like this. And with a normal EQ, I'd be pretty happy with that. However, this is SurferEQ, so what I can do is set the band to lock onto the harmonic, which sits around this frequency range and will give the recording bite. So if I set this to 1, I can see right there my fundamental frequency is around 500 Hz. So if I multiply that by 8, it will be about 4 kHz, which is around the region I want. And as you can hear, that has a much more natural sound. In fact, it even adds some tone to the recording and really brings out the pitch slides in that synth. Another thing I spoke about was the comb filter. Now what a comb filter does is it takes the signal and it splits it into 2 and then recombines it slightly out of phase. And then what you normally get with a comb filter is a constant pitch and a set of harmonics which are ringing because of that phase. However, because this is SurferEQ, you can actually lock on the comb filter to a certain frequency and make that frequency ride in time with the pitch, which is far more musical than a normal comb filter. So if I turn on my comb filter and turn on the 4th band, I can give that a boost, and this is what it sounds like without tracking any pitch. So pretty basic comb filter there, doesn't sound particularly musical, but it does add some bite to the recording. Now if I lock this onto my fundamental frequency, what I'll actually get is a boost on every single multiple of this fundamental frequency. So as you can hear, that's not particularly useful because all it's going to do is boost and cut every single frequency which is already there. However, if I set it to something like harmonic 2 or 3, then I can use it in a far more musical way. And what you can hear there is a harmony, because if you double a frequency, you're going up an octave, but if you triple a frequency, you're going up an octave and a half or a fifth. So if it was a C note that was playing, this would be boosting all the frequencies which are in G. And you can also use it to pretty much ruin the musicality, so if you set it halfway between some harmonics, and that doesn't sound particularly nice, but never know, there might be uses for it. So what I also spoke about was mixing. Now, like any other EQ, SurferEQ can boost fixed frequencies, and it can do this at the same time as boosting frequencies related to pitch. So you can expect to be able to use that like any other EQ. One thing which it could be particularly useful for, however, is rolling off the low-end rumble on a recording without affecting the sound at all, so you wouldn't be affecting the bottom harmonic at any point. Whereas with a normal EQ, if you roll off the low end, at some point the fundamental frequency is likely to come down and be affected. However, SurferEQ can ride the frequency so that the pitch will always be above the curb. However, in this version I've had a bit of a problem with that, in that if I set the curb just below the fundamental frequency, so I've set a harmonic of 0.5 here, which is half the pitch of the fundamental, and I've set myself to the tightest curb, I actually get some clicks and pops. I'm sure they'll iron that out in time, but for now we'll just have to stick to the old-fashioned methods for that. The pitch tracking on this plugin can sometimes get a little bit confused, especially when handling material which is slightly distorted, or maybe it's polyphonic in some way. It really only works very well with monophonic material. So here walking away, so here walking away. So when you're using this plugin, basically try and put it in your plugin chain before you put any distortion or heavy effects on. Last off, here are some pros and cons of the plugin. Firstly, it's completely unique. I don't know of any other EQ on the market which can track pitch and attach its bands to pitch and harmonics, so that's a good selling point for this plugin in itself. It's also got the only comb filter I know of which can attach its pitch to the pitch of the incoming material, so it makes it a lot more musical and relevant to the audio coming in. Secondly, the pitch detection is really quick. Any delay isn't really noticeable. And considering that tuners and Melodin and Autotune struggle as well with distorted and polyphonic material, it's great that this plugin can actually handle it at all, and it does a good job of it on the whole. Thirdly, it gives a really natural sound which fixed EQs don't give, and the only other way to get this kind of effect with fixed EQs is to automate the bands, which is time consuming and not particularly fun for anyone. You also don't have to use the pitch detection, and you can combine standard EQs and pitch-related EQs within the same plugin, which is really good as it means you don't have to have two EQs open to do two different tasks. So the cons? Firstly, its EQ curbs are fixed. You've only got 4 selections of EQ curbs and steepness. However, it's not a huge problem, and limitation can sometimes be a great creative tool in itself. Secondly, the plugin is considerably lighter on CPU than I originally expected, clocking in at around 3 or 4% when you've got one pitch tracking band turned on, although when you turn on more bands, it does balloon up to about 10% for me when I've got all of the bands turned on and pitch tracking at the same time. Just for reference, Autotune uses about 3 or 4% when it's pitch correcting something, and Image Line Pitcher uses about 7 or 8%. But this isn't really a fair comparison, as pitch correction plugins in SurferEQ do very different things. In the version I used, which was 1.0.3, there is a bug which causes a lot of low-end pops in certain situations when using the high-pass filter. But I don't believe the developers will leave this a problem for long, so it's a con for now, but it probably won't be in the future. The last thing I can really think of is that a smoothing control might have been a nice addition, as sometimes you get little glitches in audio which means the EQ band suddenly jumps for a moment, and having a smoothing control would allow it to start moving but then immediately come back once the glitch was gone. This would also be a really cool creative tool, as you can have the filters arrive at the next target harmonic smoothly instead of just jumping there. So, to summarise, SurferEQ is a really good plugin. It does have some bugs here and there, but then again it's only been out a couple of months, and because it's the first of its kind, the developers may have a few things to work out still. The plugin is currently available for $179, which is about £114. And I'll pop all of the relevant links in the underbar. So, thanks for watching, I hope this review was useful. Please do like, comment and subscribe for more reviews and tutorials. And I'll see you next time on Production Bytes.